Hello, everyone. I'm Anthony Gonzalez, the Program Coordinator here at the Higher Education Center for Alcohol and Drug Misuse Prevention and Recovery. I want to thank you all for joining us today for our spring webinar titled Utilizing ScreenU on Campus, Exploring a Web-Based Screening, Brief Intervention, and Referral to Treatment Tool. But before we get started, we have a few housekeeping slides we'd like to go over. We've recently switched to Zoom as our broadcasting platform. We are excited about this switch and believe this will provide a better user experience. If I can direct your attention to the bottom of the screen, this is where you'll be able to submit your questions for our presenter. We welcome all of your questions, and please feel free to submit them at any time throughout the session. We will field the received question to our presenter at the very end. We also encourage you to learn more about becoming a member of the Higher Education Center, which includes access to our ScreenU program. ScreenU is a web-based screening and brief intervention referral to treatment program. We've recently launched a new demo of the program, so we encourage you to take a look. You can do so by searching go.osu.edu/ScreenU demo for access. And of course, you can learn more about the benefits of becoming a member by visiting our website at hecaod.osu.edu. And with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce you our presenter for today, our very own Logan Davis.
Thanks so much, Anthony, and thanks so much to everyone for taking time out of your afternoon to learn a little bit more about ScreenU. And Anthony mentioned in the introduction that we do have a new demo. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll actually be using that demo to look through the program here this afternoon, and we'll talk about how to gain access to that as well near the end of the demo. So just a little bit about me before we get started. I think this is a fine picture to use in a bio, but if we want to do a true, accurate representation of who I am, I think that this is a little bit more appropriate of me. And so the reason I like to use this picture is, one, is who doesn't love an adorable kid in a cowboy hat? But two, it highlights my upbringing. So if you look closely at this picture, you can tell that it is actually a picture of a picture. And so what this is my mom every year on my birthday sends me a picture per hour of my childhood. And this is one of my favorites, but it highlights my upbringing in rural Western Kentucky in a very conservative Southern Baptist home, which really shaped the way I grew up in the relationship that I had with substances. And so it really shaped the way I grew up in the way that I've used substances growing up, which was a complete abstinence-based, and knowing that as I got older, that wasn't true for everyone, and not everyone had that same relationship, and that type of education did not work. And so it really shaped who I am today and the role that I have in viewing prevention and the educator that I am in the prevention landscape. And so I grew up in rural Western Kentucky. I attended Murray State University for undergrad. I come from a student affairs background. I attended graduate school at Louisiana State University. I have a background of working in fraternity and sorority life, primarily in the prevention world within that, and then recently in the last couple of years moved into the prevention full landscape and then working with the Higher Education Center. So that is enough about me. Let's continue and make sure we can get to the breadth of our topic today. So we're going to talk a little bit about SBIRT, because that's what ScreenU is, a web-based version of screening, brief intervention, referral to treatment. So this is kind of our lineup for today. Is we'll do a brief refresher on just what SBIRT is, who supports it, where some of the data and the highlights come from, where it is used, and then we'll go into what is ScreenU, and we'll demo. We'll spend about 30 minutes demoing the program, and then we'll look at ScreenU in practice. How is it being used on campus? And so that is kind of the three key highlights that we'll look at this afternoon. So just look at all three key components of ScreenU. So obviously it first starts with that screening, and the second piece is a brief intervention and referral to treatment, or brief intervention, and the third piece, I stole my own thunder there, is the referral to treatment. So those are the three key components that happen in SBIRT. So every single version of SBIRT has to keep those three components for it to be SBIRT. And so in this moment, I wanted to get a little feel for everyone that is on the webinar today, and just give you like a quick poll is, are you currently using SBIRT in any form on your campus? So we'll take a quick minute and have people fill out this poll. leave it open for about 10 more seconds, and then we will reveal the results. It is a tight race for yes and no, so I can tell you the results. And so right now we're at 49% for one and 51% of the other. So if you're a competitive person and you want one to win, continue to vote. And so we'll wrap it up now, and I'm going to end the polling, and I think that'll allow us to show those results. And so they should be popping up on your screen. And then so you can see that. So it's about 50-50. So we have about 49% saying they currently use it in any type of form on their campus, and then 51% saying they do not. And so that is really, really good, because we'll talk about how it is currently used on campuses in an in-person form before we get into talk about how we use it in a ScreenU form in a web-based version. So a little bit more about SBIRT, what it has been shown from the research that has been done. It has been shown to reduce typical BAC and peak BAC when students, or when people in general, are drinking. And the reason I keep using students is, one is the web-based version that we have is identified specifically for college students, but also, as we'll talk in a couple slides, it has been identified as a valuable tool for young adults and college-age students. And so it also, the keys of what it does and how what it reduces are some of the key issues that we know college students face, like limiting that number of peak drinks per setting. So reducing the average number of drinks per week, and reducing the number of drunk episodes per week, along with the overall reduction in substance misuse, which includes marijuana frequency. And so you'll notice as we're talking, we're going to talk a lot about alcohol. That is where a lot of the research lies in the efficacy of SBIRT. However, there is more and more research that is coming out that is showing that it is effective with other substances as well. So prescription drugs, marijuana. The research is still behind that from the alcohol, but we know that it is effective from the research that is done on the alcohol side. And in a recent meta-analysis of 185 different studies of SBIRT, they found that the beneficial outcomes partnered with the savings from implementing brief alcohol interventions for adolescents and young adults made it a worthwhile prevention strategy. I think this is really, really neat, because it identifies in-person SBIRT as a cost-saving strategy, when we'll also note in a couple of slides that can sometimes be a challenge, because you have to train people to do SBIRT, but also you have to have people. You have to have manpower, which comes with staffing dollars. And so while it can be a cost-saving measure to implement a prevention strategy, it can also add up as well. So a little bit about who supports SBIRT. It is supported by the World Health Organization. It is supported by SAMHSA, supported by the American Medical Association, and it is also supported by the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force. And last year, it was included in the President's Commission on Combating Drug Addiction in the Opiate Crisis, specifically in a commission that was looked at for college students. And so we think it is very, very valuable tool for colleges and universities, and why we think the online tool is just as effective, because it takes SBIRT into a web-based form, as we'll continue to talk about. We've talked about those three big keys for SBIRT, and so some of the key components that make it valuable is that it's brief. Even when done in person, it can take less than 10 to 20 minutes. It's universal. You can screen as many people as possible. You don't have to screen a specific population. You don't have to be a specific risk of specific substance use. You can screen as many people as possible, and there's even value in screening non-users, because then they can get key information when they are around people in their life that do use the substance, and continue to have a relationship with that. And also because it occurs in non-substance use disorder settings. It can be done in emergency rooms, it can be done in counseling centers, anywhere where there's a one-on-one component. That is where SBIRT can be used. And so it's not just in a treatment setting, which makes it valuable. And also it utilizes motivational interviewing, which is a key component. So it really tries to get students to evoke change behavior and change talk, which can be really, really valuable for students, because we know it's not just something that they get and they go on their way. It's utilizing something that's going to stick with them, hopefully long term, as they continue to think about that and how they are motivated to change their behavior. When thinking about the students, and just overall people that SBIRT can be used for, oftentimes we think of prevention strategies as they have to fit one of these specific areas on the triangle. And we know that ideally we would want to target the risky use. So how do we take people from risky use to a low or no risk, or maybe move them from the top of a risky use perspective and bring them down to a little bit lower? But anyone on this triangle can be used with SBIRT. And so we know it is not necessarily used to treat substance use disorders, but it may be useful in getting that student to realize, like, oh, maybe I need to go talk to someone else about my substance use patterns at the moment. But it can also be valuable for people at a low or no risk level as well. This is just a really good flow chart from the Hilton Foundation that shows just kind of what it looks like mapping out from a one-to-one in-person setting. So a person comes in, they have the screening, and then they get a yes or no of using the substance. If they get a no, they have that positive reinforcement there from not using it. And they ask further questions about assessing their level of use. They figure out what use they are. If they have a high risk of use, they do a brief intervention about that. If they're severe use, they can get a referral to treatment. And so this is just kind of idealizes and looks at in a flow chart form of what SBIRT can look like. And this is, again, a one-to-one. So if we think about a web-based version, think of one with multiple arrows coming from that person instead of just continuing to do one-off. So one person can then initiate SBIRT from an unlimited number of persons. So we've gone briefly in detail about in-person SBIRT and looked at the value of that, about it being brief, about it being universal. You can screen as many people as possible, and also evoking that change behavior. But we know that there are some challenges that come with doing in-person SBIRT, and some of those challenges are that it requires training. So anyone that you have to administer SBIRT has to be trained in that, so they know what the flow is, they know how to use the screening tools that you're using, but also that they know how to use and administer motivational interviewing, so that they become an expert in that, so they can evoke that change behavior and that change talk with the students. And also we know it can be time intensive. If one person is continuously doing one-on-one interviews, and those interviews can take a maximum of 20 minutes, 10 minutes to debrief and get ready for the next person. And so you're looking at 30 minutes per person. There's only so many 30-minute windows in a day. And most of the time, administering SBIRT is probably a part of someone's 8-hour job. And we know 8 hours can sometimes seem a little facetious. We know many of us work more than 8 hours in any given workday. And so it can be time intensive, and we know that can be a challenge to actually continue to fit in one-on-one meetings with students when doing in-person SBIRT. And the last challenge we want to highlight is that it's hard to implement on a large scale. Because it is time intensive, it requires training, it can be hard to initiate SBIRT and to screen large groups of people. And so we believe a web-based version can help combat all of these. And so that is where we want to talk and bring in and why we initially looked at why we created a web-based version of SBIRT and ScreenU is because it helps combat many of those challenges. And so that is where we'll talk about ScreenU, a web-based version of SBIRT. And here you can see just a brief highlight is that it can be used on any given platform. So it works on a phone, it works on a tablet, laptop, and a desktop computer. It adjusts to any type of platform that we have. And so some of the benefits that we feel for ScreenU is that it's a web-based anonymous screening. And then so one reason when you get it at web-based is that there is no one-on-one person who then you have to then confide in to be confidential. Not that the in-person people aren't, but it takes it even a step out. A student doesn't have to worry about somebody being, having their answers, worry about it being confidential. The student is 100% anonymous. The program is built so there is no way to go in and find individual participants' responses. Additionally, it is brief. So looking at our data over the last 3 years, we know for all three programs, ScreenU Alcohol, ScreenU Marijuana, and ScreenU RX, the average time it takes for a student to complete the screening is less than 9 minutes. And so we know the current student, that is very important to them. They can get valuable info, but also spend a minimal amount of time, which can be in some ways contradictory, right? They want valuable info, but they don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. But we know it takes less than 10 minutes to complete the program, and students find that valuable information to them. It doesn't require any training to implement. So a person doesn't have to be trained in SBIRT to implement ScreenU. All they have to do is become familiar with the program in order to implement that. And it connects students with vital resources on their campus and in the community. And so the referral to treatment piece is a resource section that campuses and organizations can update individually, and then it gives them access to give those students direct information about what's going on in their campus and on their community. And on the data side, it gives you real-time reporting, which we'll take a brief look at today, and it shows you data as the students are completing it. So it gives you information about what is happening on your campus and the risk levels that you're seeing and the use patterns that you're seeing for students in the different substances for the different programs of ScreenU that you're using. It has customizable elements along with being able to upload specific resources for your community. You can also edit some of the messaging that is there, such as welcome and thank you messages, to send specific needs that you have when students are taking those. And I mentioned previously, there are 3 specific programs, ScreenU Alcohol, ScreenU Marijuana, and ScreenU RX. In just a moment, we're going to be demoing ScreenU Alcohol, but there are also the versions of ScreenU Marijuana and ScreenU RX that follow the same efficacies of SBIRT with the screening, the brief intervention, or referral to treatment. They just use different screening tools. So looking at a quick breakdown of ScreenU, you can notice that it follows the same exact flow of in-person SBIRT. So it gives them the screening immediately after completion of the screening. They get feedback on their risk level. And then if they have a certain risk level, depending on which of the 3 programs, and they will get that brief intervention using motivational interviewing. And then they get the referral to treatment or the resources that are on your campus. So it follows the exact same flow. Looks a little bit different because of the online format, but it still follows the screening, the brief intervention, and that referral piece in the arrows. So let's take a look. Let's dive into the program. And so what this is going to look like is we're going to take a demo screening, and then we are going to dive into the admin side of the program. So we have set aside about 30 minutes to dive through a specific demo of the program. So to start out, we're going to look at a demonstration link of the screening. And so this is the screening, the exact screening of what a student would see. And so ScreenU is deployable, what we call campaigns. We'll talk about those more as we go through the demo, but what that allows you to do is create a link that you could then administer the screening. And so you can send essentially SBIRT out via email from a link, and the students can take the screening by clicking on that link. And so if we click on the link, and this is what would pop up for a student. And so here is one of those welcome messages that we have the ability to edit. And you will notice you can edit and add anything that you need here, but we do have a little scroll between the top welcome and then the bottom demographic questions that we need to answer. And so we know that our current students are easily distracted, and so we don't want to add too much space between the top welcome message and the begin button. So I caution people on adding too much information. We don't want to distract the students to where they don't think it is valuable enough to continue scrolling to begin the screening. And so these are the only demographic questions that we ask. Our gender questions go for the general binary options all the way from prefer not to list, but then also include all the trans options as well, and then preferred identity not listed, and then preferred not to state. We offer class rank all the way from first year to graduate doctoral, trying to include as many options as possible, and then age, student can input that as needed. And so once you click begin, a student is then going to be prompted what's called a gateway question. So all 3 programs are going to begin just like this with have you used this substance in a specific amount of time. So for alcohol, it's going to ask us 12 months. For ScreenU Marijuana or ScreenU RX, it's going to ask 6 months with using that substance. And so for this, for today, we're going to click yes. But if a student clicked no and then clicked continue, the screening is going to end. It's going to say, congratulations, you're at a no use. They're going to get some positive reinforcement on their decision not to consume the substance, and then the screening is going to be over. Less than 1 minute, if a student is a non-user, and the screening is going to be complete. Now you'll notice here at the bottom right where my mouse is, if a student is in recovery, they have the option to indicate that they are in recovery. And so they could do that. And so if they do that by clicking no and then clicking that they are in recovery, they're going to get a specific link or page that will then show them congratulations on being in recovery. They're going to get positive reinforcement, but they're also going to get a recovery specific resource page that is information that campuses and organizations can then upload to show specific resources for students that are in recovery. So once we answer that gateway question, we're going to begin the screening. And so for alcohol, we use the audit from the World Health Organization. So we'll have 10 questions as we continue to go through that. We're going to answer the questions today at a moderate risk level so we can see what the feedback looks like for someone who's at a moderate risk level. So how often do you have a drink containing alcohol? For this one, we're going to go 2 to 3 times a week. Question 2 is how many standard drinks containing alcohol do you have on a typical day? So for this one, we're going to go 5 to 6. Remember, we're just going to go to moderate risk level so we can see what that is and ensure that we get to the motivational interviewing piece here. How often do you have 5 or more drinks in one setting? How often during the last year have you found that you were not able to stop drinking once you started? Less than monthly. Question 5 is how often in the last year have you failed to do what was normally expected of you because of drinking? We'll also go less than monthly. Question 6, how often in the last year have you really needed a first drink in the morning to get yourself going after a heavy drinking session? How often during the last year have you had a feeling of guilt or remorse after drinking? So for this one, we'll go monthly. So question 8, how often during the last year have you been unable to remember what happened the night before because of your drinking? Question 9, have you or someone else been injured because of your drinking? Question 10, the last question for the screening is, has a relative, friend, doctor, or other healthcare worker been concerned about your drinking or suggested that you cut down? So immediately after clicking continue on the last question of the screening, you're going to immediately get feedback on your use level. And so here indicates that we're at a moderate risk. And it's going to give us information about that, but it's also going to then information of what's happening to our body as a result of consuming the substance at this level. I'm going to continue to scroll briefly down here. So we're going to get information about tolerance and just overall what's happening to our BAC level as we continue to drink at a moderate risk level that we indicated in the screen. And as we continue, we're immediately going to be taken to the brief intervention portion, to the open-ended questions with motivational interviewing. And so the next step for that will be open-ended questions, along with some paired scale-based questions to get students to think and to think about evoked change behavior. So the first question that we're going to get is, what are some reasons you've thought about changing your drinking? And typical responses that we see from students when looking at the data here, we see students think about health or finances. So those are the 2 biggest areas that we see students think about in this. And so for this one, we're just going to answer it. And so what are some reasons you think about your drinking? So if we think in the finance piece, I have been spending a lot of money on drinks. What might be a typical response we see students think. So the follow-up question to that is, if you did decide to change or stop drinking alcohol, what positive impacts might that have? And so if we think about the 2 categories that students think about the most with this question, with health and finances. So with finances, they're going to think that they would save some money. And with health, we automatically see students go to the weight loss category, even though that may not be the most prominent area they're going to gain health. That's where their mind often goes when answering this question. So in the finance piece, I would be able to save a significant amount of money. So they're getting right into the scale-based questions. So they're going to go through 3 scale-based questions asking about how important, how confident, and how ready they are to change. And after each scale-based question, depending on where they answer the scale, they're going to get 1 or 2 open-ended questions. And so to highlight how the questions are different, we're going to vary our responses from answering in the middle on the low end and on the high end from these. So we're not going to answer at a specific risk level. We're just going to vary so we can see how the questions, change based on our response. So for this one, we're going to answer in the very middle at a 5 on how important it is for us to make a change in our drinking right now. So then as a result of answering a 5 to that scale-based question, the open-ended question that we get, it sounds like changing your alcohol use is important to you. Why did you choose a 5 and not a 3? And so a lot of students, we think here of what they're going to do is they could say, I still have some level of self-control. They get a little defensive, but they still think that they have some. They know they get a little out of control sometimes, but not super wild and out of control all the time. So then thinking what would need to happen for you to go to a 5 to a 7. So why would it be more important for them to change behavior? And so we see students here, they think a traumatic event would have to happen. So right now it's not super urgent. They know that it may not be the best behaviors, but something traumatic would have to happen for them to really increase their importance. So the next scale, how confident are you on the scale of 0 to 10 that you would succeed at reducing or stopping your drinking? So for this one, we're going to answer a little bit lower. So we're going to answer a 2 and to see how the open-ended questions differ than they did when we answered at 5. Okay, it sounds like you're not very confident. Tell me why you were a 2 and not a 0. And so we see students here when they're thinking about a change, if they answer on a lower level, they often think about the support they would need to change. And so one of the things they're not confident is that I want to hang out with my friends, and when we do that, all day we drink. And it falls then right into that is what is that barrier to change? And we almost see the students, that fear of missing out piece is that I want to be around my friends, and that involves an alcohol. So a barrier is I would need new friends. So then the last scale-based question is how ready on a scale of 0 to 10 are you to make a change in your alcohol use? So for this one, we're going to go to an 8. And for this, on the higher end of the scale, there's only one open-ended response. So we'll see what that question is. And so it sounds like you're ready to make a change. What would a change look like for you? And so for this question, we see students typically think about going out less and then drinking less when they do. And immediately after clicking continue on that last open-ended question, they are immediately taken to the resource page. So this is where that referral to treatment that campuses can add specific resources to the program, and the students will know what's going on in their community and on their campus. And then so at the very beginning, specific resources are going to populate based on the program. So for alcohol, we know Wellness Center, Health Center, and Counseling Center are all going to populate on the top. So if you input resources in those, they are going to come up at the top here. And so even if you can put in 2 different counseling resources, you can have a community counseling agency as well as a campus counseling center, and both of those are going to populate at the top. Any additional resources that you add are going to populate at the bottom here. So you can add as many resources as needed, and then they're going to continue to populate at the bottom here, but those 4 populate at the top. And then right below that is some information about how they can make safer decisions around alcohol. So things that might be common to us, but we know if students are getting it in conjunction with feedback about their use can be valuable as they're thinking about how they make better and safer decisions when using alcohol. I'm going to scroll through this slowly so you can just see what this is. At the end of the webinar, there will be a screen that you can have links. So we've set up shortened links that you can take demo screenings, as well as a shortened link that you can sign up for a demo account that we're going to be using to go through the admin side of the program here in just a moment. But you'll have access to these demo screenings, so you can click through them and get access to them and kind of play around with them a little more. I'm going to scroll back up to the top so you can see what a resource looks like as you break it down. And so you have the ability to add the address as well as a phone number, an email address, and a website. And the website is linkable, so if you wanted to click directly to that, you have the ability to do so. Scroll down one more time, a little slowly, so you can see as many resources as you need to add can be populated here. Okay, so that is the screening. And so what I wanted to do next was go to the dashboard of the page. So if you are a ScreenU user and you log in to your account, this is the first page that you are going to see every single time that you log in. We're using our brand new demo account, so that is why we see Welcome ScreenU Demo here. The name of your campus is what is going to show up in place of ScreenU Demo as you're using the account. And so a few things that we're going to highlight over the next couple of minutes is we'll talk a little bit more about campaigns, and then so of what that means and what that does using the program. So we have the ability to create and update an unlimited number of campaigns, and so that is what we are using to deliver and distribute the screening. So as we create a campaign, that generates a link. And so what we'll do is we'll go in, and so anytime we create a campaign, we have the ability to go back in and edit that campaign. And then so everything that we're using, the creation of that follows up in this as well. So the first thing that we see when we're creating a campaign, we have to create a campaign name, which we can edit at any time. So if we create a campaign and we don't end up using it, we can recycle that campaign, by creating a new name. We also have the ability to assign it a department, and we'll talk momentarily about what it looks like to manage a campus account. And so you have the ability to add different departments. And so if different departments on a campus want to have access to ScreenU, you can organize it that way. One specific department on campuses that typically enjoy using this to have some anonymity pieces, athletics. Athletics can have their own department, and only people that are assigned to that department can have access to their campaigns and their data. And so if athletics wants that anonymity piece to ensure kind of the double anonymity that no one else has access to their data, they can do that by creating a department on their campus. Every campaign has to have dates associated with that. And so if we don't know necessarily when we want it to end, you can see the end date on this campaign is 2030. So if we just want it to be open indefinitely, you can just choose a date well into the future so we know it is not going to end. And so we saw when we first took the screening is that we had a welcome message. And so this is where we have access to update that welcome message, and we can edit the welcome message even after creating the campaign. So if we know we have the campaign and we need to make adjustments to that, or we need to add specific information, we can do that as needed by editing the campaign. And we also can edit that thank you message, so that last message that we saw after taking the screening, actually we did, I'm going to click over real quick. And so this is what the last page that a student will see. And so we have the ability to edit that. So edit this message right there, we can do so. I apologize for getting ahead of myself. I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to look at the admin side of the program. So as we continue to scroll down, these 4 purple boxes here, so what that is when we create a campaign, those are going to be 2 specific steps around a process known as automatic email invitation. And so one of the ways ScreenU can be used is we can send a link directly to a student via their email. This doesn't change the anonymity piece of the program, but what it does allow is for a student to get a specific link sent to their email address. And so if they use that link to take the screening, then the campus can get a yes or a no that they completed the screening. And so we often see this used in student conduct. And so they can be added to a campaign if they have a specific violation, and so they can complete that prior to their conduct meeting or hearing. And then so as a student takes that screening, they complete it. The conduct officer will see, oh, great, they've completed it. And then so that's a checkbox, boom, they've completed that section before their conduct meeting or hearing, or maybe it can be done after their meeting as a result. Something they talked about, why don't you do this? And then I'll be able to see whether you completed that. And then so these 4 boxes control that, what's known as the automatic email invitation. So you can add additional participants as needed. You can see how many students have completed it right away. You can send a reminder. So if you have a large group and not many of them have taken it, you can send a reminder, but it's going to only send the reminder to students who have not completed the campaign. If students have completed it, they're not going to get that as well. And when you set up the automatic email invitation, you have the ability to edit this email here. And then so you can edit that email after the fact as well. There are going to be some key programmatic and coding pieces we don't want to change, but anything else we can change that if we want to send specific messages, we can do that as well. So we're going to go back to the dashboard. We had a question come in briefly about if a student can take something with them once they complete the screening, and that was my fault trying to get back to the admin side of things. And so we're back at the thank you message. And so once a student gets to this last page, they have the ability to do 2 different things to show that they completed the program. And so the resource page that they get right after completing the brief intervention, that page can be downloaded at this page via PDF. And then so if they click this arrow, it's going to download it right away. And then so what it is, it's going to look exactly like that page, but it's going to be in a PDF form. And then so that'll show the risk level at the very top. I'm going to highlight it briefly here. So it's going to show that their risk level. And as they scroll down, all of the resources that are included are going to be already broken down so they can see all of that information. And it's going to include that information there about things that can keep them safe when consuming alcohol. So it's going to be identical to that resource page, but all of the stuff is going to be broken out. We're currently working with our development team to make these squares for those key pieces of information to make them smaller. We push-pull. When we edit one thing on a resource page and then to download it, it makes them bigger. So we're still working to how do we make them both look good opposed to one or the other. And one other thing they can do with this resource page is by using this envelope here, they can send this resource page directly to their inbox via email. And so the program does not store their email. All it has done is send a PDF version of that resource page directly to their email inbox. Now, there is some concern here that a person could print out 25 different copies of the resource page. Let's say if they're using it as an extra credit for a course, if a professor works with you and I want to offer, if they take this program, a little bit of extra credit for our course, the student could print out multiple copies of their resource page and then use that. There also is a certificate of completion. And so this is neat. It doesn't include their name because that would not be in the anonymity piece, but it does include a confirmation number. And then so those would all be very different as they continue to take that. And then so when thinking about the resource page and the confirmation, these are the only things that they can print out. They can't print out their specific responses to the screening or to the open-ended questions. And then so there's no way to do that because there's no way to set up the program to do that without taking away the anonymity piece from the program. So I hope answered many questions through that. I apologize for skipping over that initially. So please continue to put questions in the chat box and Q&A box, and we'll continue to answer those as we have time. And if we run out of time, we'll answer those. We'll follow up with you individually to make sure we answer your question. So as we go back to the dashboard, 2 areas that I wanted to make sure we highlighted before getting to the reports and the data piece is we wanted to get to a section on campus resources so we can show what areas there are. So I mentioned briefly when students can identify that they're in recovery is they get a specific page of resources for them. And then so that is a specific area of resources. So you have the ability to upload resources specifically for students who've identified that they're in recovery. And then so what we can do here, so you can see all of the resources that have been uploaded at any time. And so when you first start, all of these are going to be blank, but as you add resources, they will continue to show up. And then so what we can see here is all of these students are going to show or are going to see the resources when they've identified that they're in recovery. So those are going to be the specific resources those are going to be the specific resources that students in recovery will see. And so I want to show what it looks like when we add a resource. So it can be daunting knowing that we have 4 areas. So does that mean I have to add one resource? What if one resource applies to all 4 areas? Does that mean I have to add it 4 times? Well, I have great news. It does not. So when you're adding a resource, if it applies to multiple areas, you can just click which areas that it applies to, and it'll add to all of those programs or resource areas. And these are the areas that we can add when adding a resource. We can add a brief description about that. We can be as thorough or as simple as we need to be. We can just add information about the location. We can include an address, a phone number, email, and a website. Another area I wanted to get to is talking about managing campus. And so this is where if we want to add departments. And so again, that could be as if we wanted to spread access throughout campus, and what are other partners and departments that are going to help us spread ScreenU throughout campus, whether that be athletics, fraternity, sorority life, conduct. And so we would be able to create departments for those. And that is important because as we add users, we can add them to a department. So if John Doe, if we add them to Department A, they would only have access to screens and to campaigns within Department A. And so that is important. So we can continue to add different people, but then continue to organize our account as well as possible. And managing users is really, really easy. If someone does not have an account set up, all we have to do is just add their email address. And if they already have an account, they are going to be automatically added to the program. If not, they're going to receive an email to set up their account on their own. And then so you have the option to add them as a user or a campus admin. A user is important if they're going to be added to a specific department. So that just means they want to have access to one specific department. They can create campaigns and then look at campaigns and their data within their specific department. And then a campus admin means you would have access to all departments and then all screenings as well. And then we add them right away. So I've already been added, so I'm automatically added to this account. So the last piece I wanted to get to on the campus admin side is the reports feature. And then so we'll look at a general campus report. So over the lifetime of the program, but the first thing you can do when looking at a report is you can look at a specific timeline of that. So if you know you just want to look at 2019, or if you want to look at 2018, if you want to look at month specific, you can put that parameter in to do so. We're just going to look at the lifetime of this account. So we're in demonstration account. So we have some demonstration data. So we have about 70 screens in here so that we'll get a good feel for what it looks like to be in a full reporting mode. So the first thing that we're going to see when looking at a report is total screens over time. So this is going to be when screens have been taken and what number of screens are being taken on a certain date and time range. And the range is going to change for how the dates are shown based on the timetable. So here, all of the screens were completed between April and September of 2019. So that will differ if we have a 2 or 3 year time range. So we talked briefly about the automatic email invitation. So we would be able to see the students in that automatic email invitation, how many have completed it and how many have not. So students that it was sent directly to them, did more complete that or did less, or more of those outstanding. And so we get an overall risk level report as well. So this is for all of the screens that have ever been completed with that. Now, I will say you also have the ability to look at reports specifically based on campaigns. So if you created a campaign specifically for, let's say, student athletes, you would have the ability to look at that data for that specific campaign. So one of my favorite features of this reporting area is that on this specific overall risk level chart, we have the ability to click on the risky hazardous, the high risk harmful, and the high risk likely dependent and we can see a breakdown of not only their demographic information, which includes gender, age, and class rank, but it also gives us a breakdown of their scale-based question scores. So we can see a little bit of information. Now, the low risk, no use, those information, that gives us the basic demographic information, but obviously they didn't take the brief intervention, so they don't have scale-based scores for that. So, but I think it is really neat. We can see a breakdown of the scale-based responses for all of those as well, so we can see how those change based on risk level. So as we continue to scroll down, the next thing we're going to see is a breakdown of just demographic information. So overall age, gender, and class rank. And then we get through all of the screening questions that we can see. They are a pie piece, and so you can click on these. Anytime there is a pie chart, except for the automatic email invitation, you can click on that and get additional demographic information for that specific question. So for those that answer 2 to 3 times a week, we can see the breakdown in gender, the breakdown in age, and then a breakdown in class rank as well. And so that's true for all questions that are included in that screening. So this is the pre-populated report that is done in real time. So as students complete the screening, this populates automatically. You also have access to a raw data file. So this top purple box here in the right-hand corner, you can download that. It's exported to CSV. So this is going to take us to a raw data file that we're going to be able to see. And then so what this is the raw data, everything that we just saw in text and number form. And then so it gives us a breakdown of risk level. We can see their responses to all of the screening questions. But then what I love about this file is that it gives us access to their open-ended responses as well. Now, we don't know this information about who said what, but this can give us some opportunity to get some thematic data to see what students are saying about their substance use and their substance use behaviors. An additional feature that I really like about this raw data file is that it looks at total time students completed on the screening as well. Okay, we'll go back to the admin side of things. So that is the admin side of things. So please include any questions you had. I tried to be as thorough as possible, but I know I can't possibly have all of your questions in this type of format and setting. So we're going to go back into the presentation, and we'll spend a couple minutes looking at what campuses are saying and how they're using the program. And so what kind of the keys of why they love the program and what is valuable for them is that it gives them the ability to reach broad audiences. They can reach all student athletes by sending it out via email or including it into an orientation presentation for athletes. They can easily access downloadable data instead of having to worry about people inputting that when they do the in-person SBIRT. And they can easily involve multiple departments on campus, and can really increase their reach by doing that instead of reaching broad audiences. So in thinking about using ScreenU, what kind of departments are using it on campus? And so this is what we know of. I use our campus members currently aware of what departments are engaged in using ScreenU. So we know student wellness, that is our key contact on most campuses of where it is housed and where it is really going out of. Is it comes out of a student wellness office or a student health promotion office, typically is where that comes out of. A lot of key partners include athletics, fraternity, sorority life, health services, academic advising, outreach events, residence life, student contact, and counseling centers. So those are typically key partners that we see for departments that are using ScreenU. So before we get into specifically how those different departments are using the program, thinking about where kind of overall on campus that students are screening. And so one of the neat things that we've seen a campus member do is they've created kiosks in different offices on campus where we know students have to wait for appointments, or maybe at a library where students are there for a long time. And so they have the ability to have a small space in that area where it's an office or a building, and so they can have information about their office, but also information about the program. They were able to purchase iPads, and so what they do is they have the program on an iPad. What they found out is that students weren't as interested in the iPad as they were as taking the program, so they were able to get a short link for the screening. Students were taking it on their phone, and then so getting office space essentially in another office, and so they were able to engage students even outside of their office. They were able to include it in wellness presentations. We've seen several campus members do that throughout campus, and so as they present in different areas throughout campus, we've seen them partner with professors to be able to use it as extra credit, or maybe this is even as an assignment, an easy assignment for a student to complete. Going into fraternity and sorority chapter meetings, we've seen that be a very big success. And this athletics in general, whether it's athletics events, athletic orientation, working with specific teams, or maybe even working with that athletic director to email it out to all student athletes. So briefly going in, but we don't want to cut in too much to the question and answer time. And then so what we see mostly with wellness and health promotion is that they are complementing what they're currently doing in the office, whether that's 21st birthday messaging, if they're currently tabling, if they include it on their website. They're just making it, how do they implement it and use it with what they're currently doing, and in some ways creating new programs around it, but it's a great way just to supplement what they're already doing. With athletics, the key has been grading buy-in with athletic directors and coaches. And so if coaches or athletic directors send an email out with a screening link, they've seen almost 90 to 100% completion rate of student athletes completing that. If it comes from someone they don't know, the completion rate is not as high, but if it comes from a coach or an athletic director, the completion rates are way, way high. And one of the keys that athletics coaches and athletic directors love is that students that come from out of town or many times out of country or out of state, they complete this screening and immediately have information about resources in their community and on their campus. And so I think that is very valuable for their students. And for Attorney Sorority Life, we've seen it where they go in chapter meetings and they'll do a presentation, and then they will go over the results with them. So they take the screening right away, and then they can go over those results directly with them. And then conduct settings, we talked briefly about that earlier, and so we know that it can be used to triage students. So in many ways, it can be used before or after if they have a conduct hearing or meeting. And then so screening links can be sent. We've seen some use it in their conduct letter. So if their hearing letter can be, and so it could also be sent directly to their email because you have that student's email address when using that with the conduct setting. So we've seen it done with conduct before and after the conduct meeting. And we've seen campus members have said that that is valuable for them. And in clinical settings, whether that be counseling or health settings, we've seen that in waiting rooms, they can have a community tablet going on, or we have seen that students find it valuable just to know how to access the program, and then they can use their phone to access that link. And so if they're meeting with the healthcare provider or a counselor and they want to talk about that, they can self-disclose their risk level, or they can bring in that resource sheet that has their risk level at the top of that resource sheet. So thinking about where to start is how to make this a thing on campus, and some of it is we've seen that every campus has that one person who truly believes in SBIRT, in ScreenU, and that they're the ones that create buy-in with other key partners on campus, and then so that is the key. So having that one person that believes in it, and thinking about who else can believe in that with you. And so in many ways, how do you create that support system and create that movement, but also think about what is the need that it can provide. So what need can that meet? And then show them how ScreenU is going to help do that. And so lastly, I know some of you are asking to yourself, and some of you have put in the question and answer box, this is great, Logan, program is great, how much does it cost? And so Anthony mentioned about our memberships with that, and so access to ScreenU, all three programs is included in the campus membership, which is this first column here. So access to all three programs as well as everything else the center provides is $2,500 a year. So that's unlimited access to the program. You can have as many users, as many departments as needed. But let's say you're just interested in one specific of the three programs. That is going to be $1,000. And so let's say you get ScreenU alcohol and ScreenU marijuana, that would be $2,000. So it's $1,000 a program, or $2,500 for all three. So we're right at 5 minutes left. for questions and answers. And so I think we had a few, so I'll let Anthony take over here until he'll kind of moderate for as much as we have time.
Well, thank you, Logan. We do have a couple of questions here. Isn't a large value to SBIRT the warm handoff, connecting a real person to a real person, other than resources at the end? How is this different than a survey tool?
Thanks, Anthony. I think that's a really valuable question. So what makes it a survey tool? And we know the value of in-person SBIRT, I think, is going to be unmatched. It's going to be really hard to do that, but we know the challenge is we can't screen every student on campus in a one-on-one SBIRT. It's just, we know what the budgets that we have are limited. And so I think this gets us, how can we screen students that we may not be able to do with that one-on-one? And then so it's different than a screening tool. One, because we know we get the data, but it follows SBIRT all the way through. And so when it was created, it was designed as much as possible to be SBIRT in a web-based form. So it follows all the efficacies of that. And then it includes the resources at the end. So in many ways, it is just a survey tool, but it is a survey tool that is designed to be a web-based SBIRT. It was a really good question. Thank you.
Well, it looks like, Logan, you covered all of the questions. So thank you, Logan, so much for being with us today and sticking around to answer those questions throughout your session. If anybody has any additional questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to send them our way or to add them to the Qualtrics survey that will go out directly after this webinar. Just a reminder that this session's recording will be uploaded to our website and YouTube page within 3 business days.
Thanks, Anthony. So Anthony mentioned the recording, but also wanted to leave this on the screen briefly. So if you wanted to access those demo screenings, you had the ability to do that. And then so it's just go to osu.ScreenU alcohol, ScreenU marijuana, or ScreenU RX, and it's going to take you directly to one of those screenings. Or ScreenU demo if you wanted to sign up for the demo account. So it'll give you access to a campus admin side of things as well. So I think that is everything that I have. We also wanted to mention our upcoming national meeting that we have at the beginning of August. It comes up at the end of July. And so early bird registration is in full swing. It ends on May 15th. And so we would love to have you present for that. Or our theme this year is how do we work together outside of the traditional alcohol and other drug spectrum. So really thinking about how we work together. The only other thing I have is I did not include a last slide with my email address, but feel free to email me directly. My email address is davis, davis.5966@osu.edu. So if you have any additional questions about ScreenU, feel free to email me directly. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day and week.